Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Just Because Wrestling, and please welcome our very esteemed guest this week. He is, of course, former ECW World Champion, former WWE Hardcore Champion, is, of course, one and only Just Incredible. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing today?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad.
Good,
It's
good.
it's an honor to have you on. I've
you.
been a big fan, as people who've listened to the show would know, of ECW for all my life. I was a bit young at the time when it first started, so I kind of got into it at a kind of a later stage.
Yep.
But always was a big fan of ECW and your work in WWE as well. So it's an absolute honor to speak to you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, man.
So do you want to? We'll kick into it. We've a few questions here. We want to. I've always wanted to ask people from ECW, so I'm really excited for this one. So we'll start off. Billy, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's one thing that, like, kind of always, was always in my mind when it comes, because obviously ECW, made their name, of course, on hardcore wrestling, and that's obviously something that you know very well. And, like, I was always wondering, like, is there literally a trading? Is there like, 'cause, you can train to be a wrestler,
Right.
but, like, is there training required for, for hardcore wrestling, or are you literally told, all right, go out there and look, just make it look as violent and as good as possible? There is no preparation you can do for getting a chair swung at you, like, or being dropped on some thumbtacks, or like,
No.
what's that like? Just to be like, okay, I'm gonna have to go out there and have a hardcore match.
Yeah. It's actually quite easy. For me, like, yeah, there's no training for it, but I mean, it's all the same. For me as a wrestler, even when I was younger, before I trained to become a wrestler, I was wrestling in the backyard when I was 15, and I just imitated what I saw on television, and I understood how it was kind of done just by copying. So yeah, I mean, if a chair's coming at you, just put your hand up or not. It's up to you. But I always wanted to make it look as real as possible, but also as safe as possible. I never believed in doing, like, if you watch any of my stuff, I never did anything so crazy that it was going to hurt me or my opponent. Some stuff, did hurt, but it was always as controlled as possible. And we just figured it out as we went along, really, after doing it a couple of times and kind of knowing what the rules were. You hit with the safe side of the chair, which is the side that's flat that you sit on. You never hit with the other side because there's edges and just stuff like that, where you really, if you notice, that's how, they always hit with a certain side, and you just try to take as many precautions as possible. And, like, for me, when I knew I had to take a big chair shot, I would wear skateboard pads on my elbow and try to, because those things are pretty good at blocking stuff. And I wore under my black leggings, my tights, I would wear skateboard pads as well, because they just, if skateboarders are jumping off of heights and falling on their knees, I figured we had no pads out there, so that would be good protection. So I always tried to protect myself as much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because I feel like I never knew that about you. Obviously, you revealed that to us now, but the one thing I did notice with you compared to other people from your generation is that you nowadays seem to move a lot better than some of the people
Yes.
in your generation. So obviously that is like the skateboard pads and stuff obviously helped you that way.
Yeah, I believe it or not, I've been in the business 28 years. It'll be 30 years next year, I believe. No, October will be 29. So yeah, next year, 2020 in October, it'll be 30 years. And I've never had surgery. I've never had a stitch. Super glue I used, but I didn't, I was blessed. I didn't get hurt a lot. I've had a lot of concussions. I got to say that, but yeah, I always believed in protecting myself. One time, it's a funny little story I'll tell real quick. I was wrestling. I wasn't wrestling. We were doing an angle with ECW, and John Cena was. We had tickets, front row tickets to Raw, and it was myself, Balls Mahoney, and someone else. I don't remember who, but we walked to the front row and we sat there and we were taking swipes at John Cena. And in the back, he was supposed to hit us all with chairs, and I was the last one taking it. He was going to swing it like a baseball bat, and I was going to, bump over the announce table onto Lawler and Jim Ross. And I purposely wore a blazer, like a sports coat, so they couldn't see, because I had pads all the way from my wrist to my elbow. I had like 2 pads on to make sure when I blocked it, I would protect myself and the fans couldn't see it. You know what I mean? So there's always little tricks that you could, try to pull off. I always believed, like I said, believed in safety, and which allows me, to do it to this day. I'm a little fat, so I got to lose weight. Then I'll move around even better.
So, you talked there about your experience, like with John Cena and working with the WWE. You had 3 stints there. First as Aldo Montoya, and then twice you came back as Just Incredible. So one thing I wanted to ask, because you worked with, to me, you worked for 2 of the most polarizing figures in wrestling, one being Vince McMahon, one being Paul Heyman.
Yes.
So talk to us about the differences and the similarities in working for both those men.
Wow. The difference was that Paul just really gave you, a freedom. You know what I mean? A lot of freedom to really create your character, a freedom to do really what you wanted in the ring. I mean, he if there were certain things he wanted done, specific things that would help the storyline or his vision, he would tell you. But he left it up to you, which was smart, because nobody could tell you how to wrestle better than a wrestler. He would tell me where he wanted to go, and myself and my opponent, whoever it may be, we'd collaborate and put together the best stuff possible that we thought was, and he was happy most of the time, because that's, I think, the proper way to really do it. So Paul was great in that way, where Vince micromanaged everything, and he had his agents, which it's smart in some ways, but it could also be very, I don't know. It's almost like I felt agents had an agenda at times, and we were doing more of their stuff than our own, which was weird at times. But that's that part. Now Heyman was the devil. He was he was a pathological liar, and we all knew it. But to your face, he was, he looked like your best friend. Where Vince was almost more straight up with you. Paul was a bit more compassionate, or he played that he was more compassionate, where you knew what you were getting with Vince. And in a way, I almost respected Vince more for that. I had a good relationship with Vince. I had one-on-one meetings with him several times in my career. I actually preferred working for. Well, I preferred Vince's honesty instead of the BS, that Heyman would give you,
Yeah, like it's interesting. Like, enough that, like, when you came in as the Aldo Montoya character, that, like, based off your, your Portuguese background, like you do come from a Portuguese background, they gave you a character as, based off a soccer gimmick, even though, like, you don't follow the sport, and you weren't a soccer fan.
Well, I was. I played soccer all throughout high school. My dad was actually the coach of the team. And when you live in a Portuguese household, you watch soccer regardless as a kid. I just wasn't, I wasn't a huge football enthusiast, put it that way, But yeah, I could have pulled it off, I think. But I just knew that a shelf life for that in America wasn't going to win at that moment in time. I don't think it would win at any moment, just because it's a corny gimmick. Not that there's anything wrong with football or soccer over here, but I don't think the fans would have connected in wrestling, especially. Nobody wants to see that, or a hockey player, or a trash man, or a clown, or a Power Ranger.
That was the important thing about that era, of course, that everyone had like very cartoonish gimmick, and of course, then when you went to ECW, which was much more grungy and real, like, you got to be more yourself, like, and stuff, and obviously that was the contrast, like, and you obviously became much more successful, I would say. I think it's fair to say, as Just Incredible, as in comparison to Aldo Montoya.
Well, Steve Austin, Scott Hall, Shawn Michaels, they all told me this, and it's very true. And I think Rock said it recently. you take who you are, the gimmicks that work the best, you take who you are and you ramp it up to, like yourself, way higher. So that's just, I think that's why Austin worked so well. Because he was funny, but he was also really intense as a performer and as a wrestler. And, Just Incredible was me, but not me, but I was just allowed to kind of play and almost be somebody I never thought I could be. So you just got to really explore, but you're not playing like a doctor or something else. You're not playing this weird role. You're playing yourself, like, ramped all the way up. And I just think that makes it easier to find yourself,
Yeah.
And the fans see it too. The fans see it right away.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even myself, as a fan, I've been watching wrestling now for near 17, 18 years, and
Okay.
I can tell when someone is playing a character or being a character.
Right. Yeah.
I can tell that I can tell slight differences, and there has been wrestlers that we've discussed on this show that I can point out and say I don't believe that he believes the character. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And that was one thing that Just Incredible was like. It always felt that you were Just Incredible. You weren't playing a character called Just Incredible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
So two things I wanted to ask about your ECW career, and they kind of go hand in hand. Was I want to go back to SummerSlam 2000.
Okay.
Tommy Dreamer wins the ECW championship. Finally wins it. Now comes Just Incredible to reign on the parade.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. Like, do you consider that the pinnacle of your career? The best night of your career?
I think so. Yeah. I don't. It happened so fast because I didn't expect it. I didn't find out till about an hour and a half before. I mean, the show had already started, and I wasn't on the list. And Lance and I had the tag team titles, Lance Storm and I, as the Impact players, and I didn't see my name on the list. I saw Lance's, but I didn't see mine. So I was like, well, maybe I'm just doing interference or something. I don't know, or maybe I'm just getting a night off. Okay, cool. And yeah, after intermission, Paul came up to me and he broke the news to me, and I couldn't believe it. I was not anticipating it that night, especially, like I said, being the tag team champions.
Yeah.
So it was wild. It was it sounds like a Mark thing to say, but it was something, because when you grow up, you always want to be like Ric Flair or somebody that's a champion. That's who I looked up to, and in the WWE as Aldo, I never thought I could be a world champion. I mean, the world champions there was only 3 world champions in America, WCW, ECW, and WWE. Those were the 3 recognized titles, and from little old me to do that, because you never think you're big enough or good enough to get to that level was amazing. It just gave me, of course, I didn't really win the title. I didn't win anything. But it made me believe that the company believed in me. They believed that I could main event pay-per-views, that I could draw money. And I did. I mean, from that moment on, I main evented every single pay-per-view till the end. And I was very proud of that. Very proud of my run, and very proud of everything. One time Gabe Sapolsky, who ended up being the booker for Ring of Honor and a couple other territories, I think he works for WWE now. He said that not just on TV, but house shows especially, that I was the best ECW world champion in the company's history, because I was having so much fun playing the role of world champion, that even if we were wrestling in front of 300 or 400 people, I would go out there and put on the best match humanly possible.
Yeah.
Against anybody. I had diverse opponents. One night I would wrestle Roadkill or Danny Doring, and then the next night would be Steve Corino or Jerry Lynn or somebody, or Mike Awesome. Or, it was just and I always tried to give them everything I had. So I was very proud of my run.
And speaking of which leads on to my second question, is you move on then, and you're still feuding with Tommy Dreamer, and it leads to Heat Wave 2000.
Yes.
And that famous night in Los Angeles where I think you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
The Extreme Pro Wrestling
Yep.
Crowd are there. They're under the hard camera, so we at home can't see them, but the people obviously in the crowd know what's going on.
Yeah.
There's for people who don't know and are listening, there was a bit of commotion. There were a rival promotion at the time who bought tickets to sit front row. Then stuff went on, which led to ECW locker room coming out, and there was a bit of a commotion. But one thing I wanted, because I went back and watched this in preparation for the interview, is like your mindset in that, because like if you go back and watch it, you're the heel, so you don't want to. I assume you don't want to get involved because the crowd would cheer it. And like I found it entertaining because you pull out a chair, you sit down, you're just watching it all unfold.
Yeah.
But what's going through your mind? Because obviously it must be difficult then to think, okay, how am I going to get the crowd back to focusing on the match after this?
Yeah, I was pissed. You know, I was mad. I really didn't know what was going on. I had no idea that they were there. I wasn't. When you go out there, you're focused on the job. So yeah, I had no idea they were out there. There were, I believe there was like 5,500, almost 6,000 people there, sold out. A beautiful, legendary place. Actually, the Grand Olympic Auditorium, which is no longer there. That's where Pat Patterson and a lot of other guys main evented in that building. That was one of the big territories back in the day. So I was just happy to be there and to main event there. So I was upset. And Dreamer's like, he talked me down. But when we pulled it off, but it was upsetting because of course that really that made turned the vibe of the building. But in a way, I mean, it kind of helped at least get the fans to, because the fans were so smart, get them to kind of, they got booed out of the building, and kind of, we got the sympathy almost for keeping it together. So yeah, it was okay after that though. We pulled it together. Pulled it together,
That's the crazy thing about live wrestling, and stuff can happen, and we think the past other events and stuff. Like sometimes things happen, and you just kind of have to.
Right.
You have to know whether to be like your character. You have to know whether to be your character still, or do you want to divulge into like, okay, I need to go sort this out. Like, but obviously, you kept it professional, and it paid off in the end. Like, obviously, you trusted your fans to know that, like, look, this wasn't down to us. These were these guys trying to make a name from there, and look, I mean, it paid off in the end anyway. But
I think so.
Yeah. Another question I wanted to ask you again, it just kind of comes back to the hardcore wrestling thing, because like, I love hardcore wrestling as much as anyone, right? I mean, like, everyone loves a good hardcore match, it's something everyone enjoys. But like, you obviously come from an era, EW and the Attitude Era as well, where like, hardcore wrestling was very, I think you could define it fairly easily. But when you look at it like now in today's landscape, and you look at the likes of like CZW and like big Japan wrestling and stuff over in Japan, like, there seems to be a new like definition between hardcore matches and death matches, where you have like where there's like they try to ramp it up as much as possible, ultra violent. I feel like someone could die at any minute. Like, and I'm just trying to think, like, your opinion on, do you think it's just their way of trying to top what you guys did, or do you think it's them trying to trying to evolve that genre of wrestling, or like, what's your stance on the whole kind of death match, I suppose, thing?
I don't know, man. I've tried to watch it several times. I'm not a fan. I'm not, and it sounds very hypocritical, because they are trying to make a name for themselves, and they're trying to create something, you could say different. I mean, even though it was around with FMW and stuff like that, I don't know. I don't like to say it's, it's just not my cup of tea, because in ECW, even though for the time it was kind of new and different, I didn't feel like we were, like, it just seems way too gratuitous for me, like almost too much. Kids are killing their bodies, like, just like, I mean, Sabu was the only guy to do that then, right? Because he looked the part, and he was, all, you see him today, I mean, he's all jacked up. These guys will forget that at age 50, they're going to really regret it, because I guarantee you a lot of them will never have made any money. and they're going to have these bodies that are just mangled for the rest of their lives. And I feel bad for them in a way. I mean, I'm sure they don't feel that way now, but age comes around quick. Trust me, I feel like it was 2001 a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm not a huge fan, but I do get what they're trying to do. I just hope they're careful. Like one time I did glass. Well, glass. And we did it in a small building where, some guy had a bag with the stuff in there, and we poured it out, and I took bumps on it. Fans bought it, thought it was sick. You know what we did? Remember the old cassettes?
Yeah.
Like tape, the plastic tape, see-through cassettes?
Yeah.
We just crumbled them up and made them look like shards of glass, and everybody believed it.
Well, yeah.
So, you know what I mean? There's ways to do things. I mean, I get it. People may say, okay, you're taking away the authenticity. Another thing, Sabu and Terry Funk, they did barbed wire for real. So did the earlier generations. When Dreamer and I did it for a lot of these matches, we would clip the barbs on the spools of barbed wire, because the fans can't see. And if they see it, there's still something there. Don't get me wrong; it'll still hurt, but it's not going to possibly rip your arm completely open where you need 100 stitches. That's just, I'm not willing to kill myself either. But I still got the recognition. It's like, okay, am I going to be a businessman and be smart, or am I just going to almost like be a mark, and hurt myself? If you don't have to hurt yourself, why? You know what I mean? Like, we pulled it off, right? If I didn't tell anybody, nobody would know. And maybe I shouldn't be telling somebody, but you know what I mean? But still, that's why I feel a certain way. It's like, I don't know, guys, people bought it when I did it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, that's kind of the hardest part, I think, about wrestling is longevity. Like, and obviously, like, trying to keep yourself relevant and trying to keep yourself physically able to keep this up.
To do it, right. Yeah.
And obviously, in hardcore wrestling, that is a lot harder to do. Sure. And, like, look at it. Like, you look at guys, like one guy now in particular, and, like, no, I've never spoken to him or anything, but there's a guy, Drew Parker, from England, and he moved over to Japan to sign with Big Japan, and he's a deathmatch guy. He does death matches, and like, he's a young guy. Like, he's not much older than us. I say he's about 24, 25, and like, his back is just all scarred up. It's all reds. Now, he probably has his own reason as to why he does it, but like, I'm looking at him going, man, like, what? Like, why are you doing that to yourself? Yeah. Like, I mean,
especially because he's a guy that's not, he's not a household name, so I wouldn't imagine he's making much money. And as you said, like, his back's probably all scarred up, and he's going to end up with no money at the end of it, or nothing to show for it.
Look, let me tell you this. Even guys that have made it, a lot of them end up with no money.
Yeah.
Because wrestlers don't make as much money as people think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they have to. I mean, look, I guess, I love the business as much as anybody. But I was always taught to not be a mark and to protect yourself. I'm not calling anybody any names or just saying it's not cool. That's his path that he chooses. God bless him, and I hope he stays safe and healthy. But it's just like, I think that's silly to me, because who are you trying to prove that you're tough to? At the end of the day, it's a work. I mean, if you have to do it, that's fine. You do it, but I feel a lot of these guys choose to do it, and almost you wear that as a badge of honor, and I got caught in that trap a little bit when I got, I'd say after the third stint in WWE with the fake ECW. When I do indies, I would get color every day, because I just felt that's what the fans wanted. Quite frankly, I was being lazy, because it's easier when you get color, because you could lay down more and sell and just like let the blood, just grab a thing and work it, but now my head's like, I don't know if y'all could see it.
Yeah.
Pretty jacked up, and it's like, after a while, it's like embarrassing. You're getting older. You don't want to walk around like Abdullah the Butcher. It's like, dude, I might need to get a job after this. So yeah, I just say be cautious, but they're gonna do what they're gonna do, man.
So one thing you alluded to it there a second ago is I want to talk about ECW and when WWE brought it back, because
Yeah.
you were someone who's obviously there in its heyday, in
Right.
like the big time of ECW back in the late 90s.
Mhm.
What was your reaction when you first heard that they were going to bring it back?
I was excited. I was like, dude, to me, it was like, I couldn't believe it. And we
Yep.
weren't, so we were only 3 or 4 years removed from ECW. So I was like, the guys are still fairly young. I think we could pull this off. So I was really excited, very,
Yeah.
very excited.
And when did you realize? How long did it take you to realize? Okay, this isn't what it was.
Right. Well, they told me in 2005 for the original One Night Stand.
Yeah.
And it ended up being brilliant. The first one, if you recall, was as much of an ECW show as an ECW show.
Yes.
I mean, it was 100% authentic. We even had the same security.
Yeah.
Wrestled at an ECW building, referees, everyone was there. So I think the only people they used that night that weren't in the company were I think Jericho, because I was involved. Me and Lance worked with Jericho.
Yeah.
I think Terry Funk, who wasn't with WWE at the time, and maybe Mick Foley or something like that. But it was really just the WWE guys. And then when we hadn't signed yet. 2006 rolls around. The numbers were so good. The buzz was so good. That Vince was like, I'm bringing this back, making it a third brand. Again, I still was very positive. But after the second One Night Stand, I already started seeing too many problems. I mean, the main event is John Cena against Rob Van Dam. I mean,
Yeah.
really?
Randy Orton wrestled on that show. Batista wrestled on that show. It wasn't authentic to even to 2005 one, the year prior.
Yeah, I mean, Rey Mysterio wrestling Sabu. Rey Mysterio was only in ECW for a couple of matches.
Yeah.
So they were just trying to put their guys in and, use the name, which was still very popular, The second one did good business as well, but, then they did that thing with, what's his name, JBL, where he's kind of being the heel and brought some guys, and I didn't like that. And then Kurt Angle was also the big deal too. So I was like, all right, I already see where this is going, and then of course I was CM Punk's debut match.
That was one thing I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask the question.
So yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You wrestled CM Punk in his debut, and number one, he was a guy who felt at the time, and correct me if I'm wrong or if you disagree, he was a guy that if 5 or 6 years prior he was around, he would have been in ECW, and he would have been a big guy in ECW. He felt like the most authentic guy that they had.
Yes.
That fit the ECW kind of brand. But one thing I wanted to ask is, at the time when you wrestled CM Punk, did you know this guy's gonna be big, or as big as he got, or was he just another guy?
He wasn't another guy, that's for sure. We had a very, very good match.
Yeah.
He was so happy with it that he actually cried to me at the end, to thank me. He was so emotional because this was his dream, and I'll never forget that. He was very humble. He was very cool. We got along very well. And then the WWE liked it so much, we actually had a rematch a couple weeks later. I did not mind putting him over because Heyman had told me that this kid was going to be a huge star. He was already a huge star for Ring of Honor. So yeah, it was cool. And he did feel very authentic because he was.
Yeah.
But I did not see that coming. I did not see him becoming one of the biggest stars in the world, And right now, he's probably the only wrestler in the world that could really change the landscape if he showed up to an AEW.
Yeah.
That would change the landscape of pro wrestling as we know it,
Absolutely.
So, and do I think at some point he will do it? I think only a fool wouldn't, but
With the amount of money involved, I would imagine. You know?
Not even the amount of money. I just think that it would be a game changer because the wrestling world would change. You know, I honestly think that AEW could easily pull in more ratings than a Monday Night Raw if a guy like CM Punk came in and did it right. You know, just on pure sheer interest alone. That's one of those game-changing things. So, yeah, it'd be very interesting. But who knows? I mean, you know, if he doesn't do it soon, he's not going to do it all. And I just do it at all. I just can't imagine somebody not pulling the trigger on that, you know?
Yeah. It is that thing that will, like, every passing day, it seems to get more and more unlikely. But it is that thing that no wrestling fan to get out of their mind that, like, it will happen every time there's a surprise entrance, every time there's a show in Chicago. Everyone Punk showing up for this one, and like it. I agree with you in the sense that like he should come back just for the amount of buzz and for his own sake, the amount of money he would make personally, but just the amount of buzz that it would bring to wrestling, what that would do is insane. And like he has said himself, he's open to talks. He's open to talks, and depending on the program, depending on who they want to put him with, completely dictates if he comes back or not. And it is interesting. Should he go? Like he's already commented on AEW that they never wanted to do proper business. It was all like through text message. They never wanted to have a meeting to be like, look, let's.
Wow, that's surprising to me. That's surprising. But I've heard about a lot of not so great things about AEW. You know, I see that as a potential huge problem from a business standpoint because you got 4 of the boys as executive vice presidents, and you never want that. You know, you have Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Cody Rhodes. You know, I could see a lot of personal politics. They don't want CM Punk there because then they're breaking in on their money or their programs or whatever. You know.
Yeah.
I don't think Cody needs to worry about it because he's already got his own reality show coming. He's already on another show for TBS. So I don't see him being a problem with it, but who knows how the other 2 feel, or the other 3, excuse me. But I can't understand why they wouldn't properly sit down with them, fly him into Jacksonville and talk business. You know, if Tony Khan is willing to spend the amount of money he spends and brings in all this talent, hell, this would be the time, and especially with AEW now standing alone on Wednesday nights. With no competition. I don't think that's going to make a huge difference either. I work for Vince Russo and his brand, and we have an AEW review show. I reviewed every single Dynamite since the beginning, and I see a lot of instability with that company. They've tried. They did great with Jericho. The first year was pretty decent. It was pretty hot, but when COVID hit, I think it hurt in so many ways because not having fans is really hard to judge. Guys and talent and who's over and who's not over. They brought in Sting. So it's not like, they brought in Christian, which a lot of people thought was going to be CM Punk. So I think the time would be sooner than later if they don't pull the trigger this year, I don't see them ever pulling the trigger.
Yeah. And
definitely.
It is that thing that like I said, every passing day becomes more and more unlikely. And like, there will be a point where he will come back, but there won't be any buzz about it. Like he'll come back for his Hall of Fame ceremony or something, and no one will care. No one will care because we're not going to see him wrestle. And if he does wrestle, it'll be like when Brett and Vince faced off at WrestleMania 26.
Right, it's already done. That was done. It should have been done, a decade ago.
Yeah.
I hear you.
And that's the one thing, you worry about. And another analogy that you talk about Brett and Vince, and you can even say the same about Shawn Michaels when he returned in Saudi Arabia. Like, you don't want to leave it too long in the sense that people will go, oh, well, you should have done it 10 years or a decade ago, So, us as fans and Justin, I know you're probably the same, like, wrestling is better when CM Punk is in it rather than when he's out of it. And like as you said, it does have potential to change the landscape. So we'd be hoping one day that it happens.
I just think it would be a huge opportunity to shove it in Vince McMahon and Triple H's face.
Yeah.
I mean, God, Vince would lose his mind if he ever lost even a weekly rating to somebody like AEW.
Yeah.
I know it's not a competition like that. I really don't see there being competition, but if they could start pulling in 2 million fans on AEW Dynamite, beating out Monday Night Raw, that would be pretty epic,
And especially with the quality of Monday Night Raw at the moment, it is
right.
possible.
It is possible.
They're not firing on all cylinders or anything for Raws.
Well, it's just changed so much. I don't think anybody's really. I mean, look, Drew McIntyre is wonderful. Bobby Lashley's really coming into his own. So many guys are good. It's not that, and the gals are good. It's not that they're not good. It's just something just doesn't. They never properly, I think, passed the torch from the Attitude Era guys.
Yeah.
And maybe not even then. The 2005, 2006 guys. Those guys never really passed it to the next generation properly. It's like that's why it only seems to matter when somebody that's older comes back. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. It's like we lost a generation in between. Like guys like Christian are coming back, Edge are coming back, the Hardys are still doing it. It's like when is that other generation gonna come? And get there? It's like fans just aren't interested, and I don't know why that is. You got to get when the business is hot. That's when those top stars have to pass that torch down and make sure that they give it to the next generation, or else you're gonna skip out a generation and almost have to start from scratch again. I know the argument too is not as many people are watching cable as they were back in the day. I certainly don't have cable because I stream everything. The way we get our content is much different. So maybe that's part of the reason. But it can't be all of it, right?
Yeah.
And like that, like I mean, WrestleMania is coming up, and this episode will probably be released after WrestleMania, but as the time of recording, this is coming up to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And I think this WrestleMania is probably one of the most important ones in recent memory, just due to the fact that there is no part-timers on the card, bar Edge, who doesn't even feel like a part-timer, just based off the work he's done over the last couple of months. But like, if this WrestleMania does well, it proves to Vince, especially because I think he's the guy that you need to prove this to, that you don't need the likes of Goldberg, you don't need the likes of Brock coming in and winning titles and dominating the card. Like you can rely and you can build. Like perfect example now, Cesaro is getting a big singles match on WrestleMania against Seth Rollins, a guy who he can have a really good match with. Right. If Cesaro goes out there in front of 25,000 people and has an unbelievable match and wins the crowd over in this match with Seth Rollins, like, what's stopping Vince going, you know what, this guy actually has a connection with the crowd. Right. Why not give him a world championship run? Why not see what he can do? And like,
I agree.
I know there's a whole like, he's not American or whatever, but like he can appeal to different, and that's I think this WrestleMania especially is an incredibly important one just for that aspect alone, that it can prove that you don't need the part-time guys to headline these games.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it would be a nice opportunity. But another thing, too, I think Vince waits too long. It's like Cesaro's been around for so long, and they've done so much damage to him that I think fans are just like, all right, we've seen him for so many years. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think we lose interest just as, like anything else. There's a window of opportunity. If you don't pull the trigger on somebody within the first 3 or 4 or 5 years, I mean, he's been with the company almost a decade, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a long time,
And like you're
close.
Like you talk about, even just for Cesaro as an example, like it was WrestleMania 30 when he picked up the Big Show and dumped him out of the ring. Right. And like that's 7 years ago now, and they haven't really done much with him. I know they put him with Paul Heyman, that didn't work, and like he's just kind of been floundering in the mid card for so long. But like to your point, Vince just seems to take too long to invest in people, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see anybody exciting. And another bunch of guys that are in NXT, they're losing those guys, the Adam Coles, the Tommaso, and what's the other kid, the Johnny Garganos. Those guys are going to be, they'll never, if they even come up to the main roster, which is ridiculous because they're better than most people in the main roster. You know, I just don't understand. What are you waiting for? You know, and just allow these guys to do it. I think their system, quite frankly, is broken. I think that's even, it's not even, I don't think it's about the performers. I think it's the system. The system, the way they have it, just to me does not work. You know, they had so many guys that were hot that fans could have wanted to see. And, you know, and it's just, they wait too long. That's, you know, if somebody's hot, if somebody's getting over, you got to throw them the ball. See if you could run with it, you know.
Like it proves your point in the sense that the amount of people who were really, really hot on NXT television went over to the main roster and they done nothing with them. Like Andrade, now who was released recently, was one. Aleister Black, another. Like all these people that they had, and like you think, okay, like these are the future, and then they go over and they sit in catering, and are floundering and doing nothing, you know.
Well, look what they did with Drew. I mean, he had to leave and come back. I mean, you know, and I hate to say it, but there's barely any excitement there for me, just as a fan. He's brilliant when he wrestles. He does very little that I could say is bad. He's very talented, as talented as anybody in the business. But something just doesn't excite me. It's not. He's a good-looking guy. Great body. He's got good charisma, knows how to work, can do it all, knows how to talk, but just doesn't, I don't know, man. I just think it's their storylines are so bleh. Yeah. You know, I don't care about their storylines. If you don't care about storylines, then it's like the people suffer the people that are in those stories suffer. You know, it's like watching The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead was really good for a lot of years, but now it's just kind of there. So you know, and it's like that's how I feel about the WWE. It's just nothing. There's nothing exciting about what they do. Everything is so predictable. Even the stuff. The Fiend is probably the best character they've created in the past 5 years. But even that, you could tell, is already kind of like, all right.
Yeah.
They could ruin shit like that so quickly. You know, who's the next dead man going to be? For example, is it going to be the Fiend? Who knows? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, like they had, to your point as well about the Fiend, like. He looked like, you know, this is the best creation they've had in the last 5 years. Then they did the thing with Hell in a Cell with Rollins where it was a DQ, wasn't a DQ, whatever. Right. And then like he was kind of floundering then from then on. Went with Cena this year's Mania, obviously under different circumstances. It looked like he was getting some of the momentum back again, and then again it fell kind of flat. Yeah, it's you know, I can't find anything wrong with what you're saying here. Like you're 100% right.
There's a lot of problems like surrounding WWE at the moment. Like I think oversaturation as well is a big issue. Like just there's too much content going out to the point where you're like, why should I tune in tonight when I can literally watch it again tomorrow? When I can see it on you know,
especially when the shows look and feel so similar. You know, like Raw and SmackDown feel the exact same. There's no different feel to them. They're produced the same. The stage is the same. Like
pay-per-views, they're no different either. Yeah. And AEW has the same problem. I think that's more of a COVID problem too, because fans, it really goes to show how much wrestling needs fans. I know they have the Thunderdome and all that, but still, there's nothing like the live house where, you know, fans can really look. ECW, the fans were part of us. They were part of the creation. Like, they were part of the show as much as anything that we've ever done. They were just great, and they played along, and that's what really is the lifeblood of wrestling. And until that comes back, it's going to all feel similar. Raw for 3 hours is just too much. I mean, Raw and a pay-per-view are almost, I mean, they're not, but they are. You know, they really are. You know, you just get longer matches, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. I'd like Raw. I think 2 hours is probably the optimum amount of time for a weekly TV show.
Yeah.
And Obviously, you can go to 3 and 4 hours then for pay-per-views, but yeah, I do think you're right in the sense that like, yeah, fans do play a massive part in wrestling, and like, I think it'll be interesting now with WrestleMania. Obviously, I know we have 25,000 fans, which is a huge amount of people, but when you take into consideration that it should be 75,000, it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to just hearing actual noise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Something.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Genuine reactions as opposed to kind of piped in noise, which I've gotten too used to. Do you know what I mean? Like,
No doubt.
And it'll be interesting to see, who, like, for so long the crowd has dictated who companies go with and who they push. For example, someone like Daniel Bryan probably wouldn't have gotten the run he got if it wasn't for the crowd getting behind him. So it'll be interesting to see who's over and who's not once WrestleMania comes around, because we haven't known for the last year and a half who the crowd are into and who they aren't. I have my ideas as to who it'll be, but like, you won't know until we get in front of a crowd. Like,
and like, speaking of WrestleMania, like, you yourself, you've been at a WrestleMania, like, you've been there in the back, and like 7, I believe it was, wasn't it?
I wrestled the opening match on Sunday Night Heat at WrestleMania 17.
Yeah. So,
sorry, no, but the anniversary of it is today, isn't it? 20 years ago today.
Oh wow, I didn't know.
I think the first of April, 20 years ago. I think I saw that on Twitter today. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Billy. It was a fun fact.
But yeah, talk us through that. What it's like being backstage at a WrestleMania, the biggest show of the year, and especially that one, like that one in particular, where it's like lauded as arguably the best one ever.
Right.
Like, talk us through what it's like to be in the middle of all that. Like,
it's intimidating. It's so it's like nothing you've ever seen in your life. I mean, unless you've done them. Like, just looking outside the curtain and you see 65,000 people. It looks like when I walk through the curtain to go out to the ring for the match, I never get nervous ever. I haven't been nervous going out to the ring in a long time, and I remember getting nervous. And just seeing it looked like when you look out into the ocean, and it just never ends. That's what it looked like, and the fans are just, and it's such a long walk to the ring. It's like, wow, once the bell rings, it's like, that's the easy part. But up until then, you're nervous. You're waiting for them to tell you to go with Gorilla. It's nuts. It's like nothing I could even explain, really. It's just awe-inspiring. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
So one thing I wanted to ask about, we talked about current wrestlers and the current kind of landscape of wrestling. The one thing I wanted to ask you is, in your opinion, someone who's been there and done it, is there anyone you see on either an AEW Dynamite or a WWE, or even outside of it on the independents, who you think is like the future of the business?
Oh wow. MJF.
Yeah.
I think he's a really good traditional heel. He's somebody that he's young. I think he's like 25, 24, 25. And he has such a quality of just being not afraid to being hated. Like, I think a lot of heels in the business are they're not true heels anymore, where they they kind of want to be cheered, like, and that's fine. I mean, I understand you always want to get a pop, but he really loves to be that heel, and we don't see that as much as we used to. You know what I mean? So, and his wrestling abilities is really as good as anybody's. As long as he stays healthy, I really see him as being the guy. He could be like the next Ric Flair in this business if he keeps doing what he's doing. I believe.
I think he believes that too. I think he believes that.
Yeah, he certainly does. He certainly does.
No, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, he certainly has all the things about him that literally all roads seem to be pointing towards, him being, being at the forefront of AEW anyway, if he decides to stay there. I think if he ever decided to jump ship and go to somewhere like WWE, I think he'd do just as well. Just because he is that talented, he is that charismatic, that like it's impossible to ignore him. Like even if WWE decided to go, you know what, we don't see it, we'll put him in a stupid little, tiny little feud down the bottom of the card. I think he'd still go out of his way to make it, people be talking about it, So yeah, I think you're 100% right there. Jack, is there anything else you want to talk about?
The one thing I wanted to ask, or not even ask, but it's just is within the wrestling news. So this is going to come out after WrestleMania, about 2 weeks after WrestleMania. One thing I did want to ask though is it was announced this week that someone very well, because you would have worked with him a lot, Rob Van Dam, is going into the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah.
So is there anything you'd like to say on Rob and his induction into the Hall of Fame?
I mean, I'm happy for him. He certainly deserves it. I think Rob was ahead of his time. An amazing athlete, like a one of a kind athlete. Like the things he does with his body, still at this level in his career, it's amazing. And he's still going. So. I have a ton of respect for him. I like the guy. We've always been friends. It's a shame we've never gotten to work. Because if ECW was going to continue, Paul Heyman made sure that Rob and I have never touched in an ECW ring. It's a little known fact, but that was the big thing that Paul wanted to do, was have Van Dam chase me for a year, and then beat me for the title eventually, and have him become the ECW World Champion. So we even main evented a pay-per-view as a tag team. I think it was Sabu and Van Dam against myself and Lance Storm or something like that. And the whole match we never touched, not once, not a punch, not a kick, not a lockup. And that was going to be the story told. And it's a shame I never got to do that, but he deserves it, and I'm glad he's there. And I couldn't be happier for him. Nicest guy in the world.
Yeah. No, again, like I totally agree. He was totally ahead of his time. Like you said, like he even fits nowadays, with certain guys anyway, definitely. And yeah, I mean, that's class that you thought, but that you said that there. That's something like I never would have thought that. And like, it's crazy that he didn't get the run that he got in 2006 back in the original ECW, but it's building him up the car. Obviously, he had the big long reign with the TV title, and he won titles a few times. So like he was being built up to that, and of course, obviously, it never got to come to fruition. But yeah, I mean, what he is a legend. He is a legend. You can't deny that he is, like, just based off accomplishments alone. Like he's won everything, and oh, definitely. That's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah. One thing I would like to see now that we finally have another, because we've had the Dudleys, that were ECW alumni in the Hall of Fame, and now Rob Van Dam. I would wonder if one day they maybe induct ECW as a whole. Like as a group, right?
Yeah. Because like the thing is, like with the Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame, it's not really a Hall of Fame in the sense that like you can do they can do what they want with it. So like why not?
Well, I figure they own the brand, and it's still celebrated to such extent, still talked about. So I was just curious if, like, while Heyman's still there, if they wouldn't have maybe Dreamer or Sandman, Raven, like Taz, the certain guys that really, made ECW what it was. I think that would be a cool little nod to do them maybe someday in Philadelphia, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Maybe someday.
Stranger things have happened, really. It's a good concept.
Yeah.
Billy, is there anything else?
There's one last thing I wanted to say, right? And it's not a question. It's not a question. It's just a fact. And I don't know if you were aware of this, but it's funny, right? So, have you ever heard of the popular game show The Chase? No, it's a British TV show, a British game show that's popular in the UK and in Ireland as well.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of The Chase. I watch it kind of regularly enough. I like, it's probably my favorite game show. And I was watching it there one day, and So like, you base the whole premise of the show is you answer questions, but they're like multiple choice questions. So you get A, B, C. And one of the questions, every so often they throw a wrestling question in there. And one of the questions was, which one of these was a former professional wrestler? Was it A, Justin Amazing, B, Justin Fantastic, or C, Just Incredible? And I thought it was, I remember being like, that is actually hilarious. And I remember in my head going, I wonder, did they ever like, do they have to say that? Like, do they have to be like, oh yeah, you're just going to be a question there on our game show?
That's funny. Did they get it right?
They got it right.
That's awesome. I never knew that. Now I have to go and look. I got to look for that on YouTube or something.
I think we can send it over to you. I'd say we can find it somewhere.
That would be fantastic. I would love to see that. That's really cool. That's funny. That's really funny. Awesome.
I'll play it again. I'll send it over to you. But like, it is. I remember watching it going like, because they don't happen often. But when the wrestling questions happen, obviously I'm like, yeah, I know this one. But like. Yeah,
great.
I hope this guy gets it, but like he got it. He wasn't a wrestling fan, I don't think. I can't remember, but he got it right anyway. And I was like, yeah, that's cool.
That's hot. That's funny. That's very funny.
So listen, Justin, it was an absolute pleasure. We'll let you go now. You were gracious enough to give us an hour of your time.
Oh, of course,
So before you go, is there anything you want to plug, or is there anything you want to advertise?
Sure. Just follow me on Twitter at PJ Polacco, and of course, same on Instagram at PJ Polacco. And if you're interested in any of my merchandise, go on over to prowrestlingtees.com/Just Incredible. I have over 20 designs, some old ECW designs, some Aldo stuff, some current stuff. So a whole bunch of new stuff. Go there and check it out. prowrestlingtees.com/Just Incredible.
And we'll when we promote this, we'll add the link to your Pro Wrestling Tees store to
very cool.
All the promotions and stuff, so you might get a few notices on that. So
nice.
Listen, Justin, it was an absolute pleasure. I've been a big fan of ECW, as I said at the top of the show. So it was an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, and
we'll see you down the road. Thank you very much.
Yep. Have a wonderful night, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.